Harjap Singh Bhangal is a UK immigration lawyer and has been patiently waiting while we've talked about Trump and everything else. Good morning to you.
Morning, Julia.
Thank you so much for waiting on the line. I appreciate that. Latest development here is after the Bibi Stockholm and Salmonella and all of the fuss and European Convention on Human Rights is that the EU, according to documents seen by the Times, has rejected any attempt by the UK to create a new deal where they can have a migrant returns agreement. Ursula von der Leyen, one of her most closest officials, has told the number 10's national security advisor, ain't going to happen. The EU aren't going to agree to it. Given that that is what Rishi Sunak was pinning his hopes on, to basically say once they've come here, they tried to claim asylum in Italy or Greece or somewhere else on the way, we can then return them to those countries. That's also what Labour's Keir Starmer is planning to do if he gets into office. Does that mean that that is a no-hoper?
Yeah, I mean, this is not new because they said this about 4 years ago. And last year, every single EU country said we're not going to sign a returns agreement. So it's not really wise to pin that. What was wise was when we negotiated a deal after Brexit, the Australian who helped us negotiate it, who had very little knowledge about UK immigration, failed to negotiate return agreements with individual countries. And as a result, we only have 6. So they're in 7 years, which is not great.
But isn't the issue that those countries just don't want those people back? Thank you very much. I mean, we're not willing to play along with the EU sort of burden, sharing the burden out. There were hundreds of thousands of illegal migrants. And, Poland is a member of the EU. They don't want to have a whole load of migrants who are currently sitting in Italy and Greece. No other country does. So why would they want to take our migrants back?
Yeah, I think what it is, they already feel that they take their fair share and fair burden of migrants, which is pretty much true. And so they take that and they feel, well, hold on, why should we take every single migrant that Britain wants to send back? Yeah. Britain should deal with its own. And we were promised as a country that our borders would be protected. We were promised it by this government and saying, well, hold on, we'll secure our borders, no one will get through, we don't want to take this burden from the EU. And they failed to do that in the 7 years. So that scheme, as a scheme going back to the EU and saying, please, can it be like before where we can send our migrants back to you under the Dublin Convention? It's not a good look, and it's not going to work. And it's sort of a false promise once again to the British public. It's trying to promise something that you know very well is not going to be delivered.
But we already weren't sending a lot of people back even before we left the EU. I mean, it had already massively gone down, and we'd already seen that explosion in numbers from 2015 onwards with the Syrian war. I mean, and that's the point at which other countries went, this is now on a different scale. We no longer want to play, understandably. In terms of where we are right now, we were hoping to speak to our reporter, Ollie Whitfield-Miocic. She's out on a fishing trawler in the middle of the channel. Turns out, not a very good video signal from there. Yeah. Who'd have guessed it? It's funny, actually, because the migrants seem to have a great signal when they're calling the lifeboats, don't they? But we have seen, I mean, these huge numbers of people coming over, sometimes 700 in a day. These numbers are off the scale. This bid to sort of house them in the Bibi Stockholm barge and other barges and, RAF barracks, former student accommodation. Is any of that the answer?
Well, not really. The barges are going to cost 1.6 billion for 1,500 spaces on 3 barges. If you work that out, that's £533,000 per bed per year. That is not value for money.
I mean, you could put them up in the Ritz for that.
You get better value for money in the hotels where they're staying at the moment. The other thing is if you involve the RAF barracks and all the other proposed accommodation, you only get to about 4,000 spaces. Yeah. That will not even cover a quarter of the year's crossings. So it's definitely not the answer. It's definitely not the key. We're going to have to do a mixture of everything and maybe a processing centre in France, secure our borders, but more importantly, catch the gangs, catch the gangs, catch the gangs. We can't seem to catch these gangs who are operating for 20 years from the same French coastline to the same Kent coastline, using the same route, same methods. We cannot seem to catch them, almost like saying, I don't know who my local bus driver is. I've been getting the same bus for 20 years and the drivers stay the same. And the government are saying, no, sorry, we've got no ideas, 20 steps ahead of us.
This is exactly. I mean, we've got footage of, the French actually watching them leading these boats out onto the beach. The thing is, you can arrest 40 smugglers today and another 40 will appear tomorrow to take their place because the money is so lucrative.
But the deterrent has to be to the smugglers. I mean, the drug dealers drug dealing is stopped by locking up drug dealers, not by locking up drug users. So locking up migrants will not stop people smuggling. Once you put, say, 40 or 100 people smugglers in jail for life, and then the message will get across. That's a deterrent. At the moment, there's no deterrent to the gangs.
Well, the reality is you get less of a punishment for smuggling people than you do smuggling drugs or guns, and that's why that market has moved on. What do you make of the comments of Britain's most senior diplomat in Kabul when it fell 2 years ago today to the Taliban? That's Laurie Bristow. In an interview, he said that Britain has an obligation to Afghan refugees, particularly those who helped the forces over 2 decades, and we need to do more to help those people who are still not making it. We know on the weekend when we saw 50 migrants rescued, 6 died. They were Afghan migrants themselves. Should we be doing more for Afghans, specifically those who were most at risk, who worked with British and other forces over those years that we were at war in Afghanistan?
Well, principle of life, which probably everyone's parents tells their kids, if someone helps you, you help them. So it's quite important that we show that as a society. And also, it's just, isn't that the right thing to do? I mean, I don't think anyone can disagree that if someone's helped them, then that they should help these people. I'm totally flabbergasted by the fact that we would not want to help people who risked their lives, went against their own regimes, risked getting beheaded, risked their families getting killed and tortured to help us. And now when they need our help, we'll say, sorry, no room at the inn.
Yeah.
It's not very...
Don't worry, we got the dogs and cats out, though. That was the important thing. Harjap Singh Bhangal, thank you very much indeed.